Hi everyone, I'm Liam, and here are my reflections regarding the IBUS 434 course that we've all been taking with the Zeta. On my agenda for today, I'm going to talk about the American Factory documentary. I'm going to talk about Peter Mearns, our guest speaker, and I'm going to give some closing thoughts regarding those two things and kind of the course as a whole. So, first up, the American Factory documentary. Now, the thing that surprised me the most with this film was how both willing and unwilling both sides' efforts to adapt were. You had factory workers and management, all from either side, completely unwilling to adapt to the other culture. They were kind of just like, let's get in here, work, get out of here, and that's the end of that. Whereas we also saw people from varying degrees of seniority, opening their eyes and opening their ears to these new cultures they were working with for the first time and trying their best to digest all that and implement it with their own culture to create a healthier, more productive work environment for everybody. The next thing that surprised me was how the employees treated the safety conditions in the workplace. Now, I probably am not just speaking for myself when I say that I heard some stories that my parents have told me from their time, when they were younger, growing up and moving up in their careers, and how sometimes they were subjected to some pretty sketchy, tasks at work where the mentality around it was just kind of like, you need to get it done. No matter how you get it done, it just needs to get done. And it was cool to see people of an older demographic in this documentary speaking up when they saw something like this and saying, you know what, I'm not putting myself through that. And there may have had something to do with the cameras involved, right? There's a little less pressure to just get it done. But, anyways, I thought that was interesting. And lastly, I think that it was sort of seen in the documentary, but it wasn't explicitly talked about. But I think that the the Chinese company's intention for opening the factory was feigned from the get go. Like I think they came in and said, "Oh, from a promotional standpoint, said, oh, we're going to give all these new jobs back to the workers of Dayton, and it's going to be great for the economy." And people really bought into that, and they did honor that at first, but ultimately, I think it was pretty clear that they were willing, or rather, that they were planning to move into automation kind of from the beginning, and they ended up doing that pretty quickly um, the second they got any pushback. Next, to talk about our guest speaker, I thought first his advice on negotiations was interesting. Now, I didn't personally speak up when he brought this question up, but I would have said the same thing as all of my peers did here, in that, of course, I'll take the home court advantage. Why wouldn't I? I'd rather negotiate from home than, where I'm comfortable than somewhere where I don't know. But I think there's a lot to be said once he proposed that side of the argument, that allowing yourself to just dive into a foreign culture and immerse yourself in it as a way of removing distractions and just focusing on the goal you have is a super valid way of going about a negotiation scenario. Next, I say he had a way of going against the grain, and I think you all know what I mean by that. Um, he had some controversial opinions and some hot takes, and he kind of reminded me a bit of Lloyd Michaels, for all of those of you who've had him in that way. And I think it's important to have people like that kind of challenge our way of thinking. It forces us to look at the other side and restructure our opinions on things. And lastly, I think his advice on loyalty to a company is so valid, because I know personally I've always thought, oh, this company's given me an opportunity, I owe it to them. But ultimately, I think skill development and advancement, using that as leverage, is more important, especially this early on in all of our careers. So, some closing thoughts. Um, as a whole, I think studying these advanced topics in international business has been fascinating. It's been applicable to a lot of the relationships and interactions I've found in my personal life, and I'm sure I'll find more of in my personal and professional life moving forward. And I just want to say thank you to everybody in Azita for making this an engaging and fun environment given this scenario we have to work with here with COVID. Thanks for listening to my presentation.